Hi everyone, Paul Lange from Disciplined Trading Strategies with this week's Trade of the Week videos. For the week ending February 13th of 2022, the stock was LUMN. This happened on Friday, that was the 11th. This is based on a gap carry with an entry on a 15-minute DTS buy setup failure pattern. The management simple, reward to risk 3.6 to 1. As usual, what's happening for free members of DTS this week? We have our DTS special educational event for everybody. It'll be Wednesday, February 16th, 5 o'clock as usual. It's called Do Not Try to Buy the Lows, ? You can read the comments there. We'll be going into, I think, a great question with a lot of charts to look at. We'll see you then. This was the daily chart of LUMN. This was a gap carry because this gap happened the prior day. This was a great gap down the prior day to actually trade. I was doing other things, didn't do this one that day. One of the favorite concepts for me on gaps is actually not doing them necessarily at open or even that day, but the gap carry itself, meaning using the power of that gap to trade it on the second, third, or whatever day following the gap, because some strong gaps will continue in that direction for several days. So this is on my list this morning because of this chart pattern. It's going to open with the small gap up right to about there, and then after the day of the trade, it looked like that. Biggest red bar on the chart. Can't ask for much more. Here is the 15-minute chart just because it shows a little better detail. From the prior day, of course, that's that big gap down through here. And then it didn't, it had that drop in the morning, but that was it, just the opening 15 minutes. And then it rallied back and kind of closed like that. Well, the next day, that gap up kind of causes a little bit of a buy setup, if you will, at a higher low. And since this is a bearish gap, if any bullish pattern fails, it makes for a great entry. It's not necessarily the strategy, but it's the entry in this case. So when we gap up, I was taking it underneath that prior day's closing area right in there somewhere. Stock dropped nicely the entire day. When I show you the next charts, it had a remarkable pattern going lower. It's one of the reasons I wanted to show it. This is one of my favorite strategies. As you hear me go through these, I usually identify there's 2 or 3 kind of bread or butter strategies I really love that I look for. Some days I'll stretch to some others. Naturally, I have a whole glossary, if you will, of potential strategies, but I always like to go to my favorites as much as possible. This is definitely one of the favorites when you get everything set up right like this. So 15-minute chart, you can see the overall pattern there, part of the strategic concept. Here's the 5-minute chart, and you can see just a beautiful pattern heading lower. So again, opened right up in there with a small gap up, entry under the prior day's low, entry under 1080, stop over 1090, and this was originally set up to be in halves, and as I started to trail it, it just kept dropping, and I ended up taking the whole thing there. That was a huge bar at the time, and I'll show you on the next chart, it did continue to go lower. I could have been with this. I got taken out by 1 penny actually, and naturally, as just a walk away, this would have done even better. It was a great trade as it was for what it made, and this is one of those all one target type trades. Here's the 1-minute chart, and you can see I had started to trail some of it. There's the target is off the screen here, but I started to trail like half of it once we were here, and it just kept dropping. So back to the 5-minute chart. I ended up trailing, and that little topping tail there is what took me out by 1 penny, or I perhaps would have got it even lower. I might have got taken out here because I started to get very tight at that point because we already had one of the biggest daily bars on the chart. Also, I had other shorts that day that I took to the close. So I kind of like to spread it out a little bit and not necessarily be holding everything because some of it may back up on you, the market may bounce. So save some, take some. This one I took and got trailed out on that little bounce right there. If you like trades like this that are well organized, discussed ahead of time, and very playable, come join us in the DTS Trading Room. Head over to the DTS site, figure out how you can join us. Until next time, this is Paul for DTS. Good trading, everybody.